Today, we will be talking more on this Web3 comms side of things, right? Obviously, as we know, like the core of Web3 is the technology itself, right? One which we all believe in and believe the future to be in. And basically, I would say, like, as this space evolved, like from its origin until now and moving forward, it's requiring a lot more different types of like people and skill sets to be involved in the space rather than just like programmers working on code, right? So in particular, the topic today is BD, but also more importantly, connecting relationships and how to like thrive in this like wild Web3, which is still like very much emerging market and space. As a brief introduction, like there will be some like, how do I say, like themes that we will be going throughout the presentation. Things like, you know, avoiding those maybe like more traditional Web2 types of like developing business relationships through like, you know, cold outreach, spammy like messages, and more so like building relationships, which I mean, it's important for all spaces, but particularly Web3. And then more so in particular, maybe touch on some ways and methods how to go about actually meeting people, meeting the right people. How do you approach those like introductions and conversations, like what you should actually be proposing, like offering value basically, and then how to actually like this approach of creating like personal and genuine conversations and relationships, and how that actually can translate and evolve into meaningful partnerships. So let's get into it. There is like reasons why this matters. So it's not just like let's talk for the sake of talking, but the importance of, I would say, this messaging through this workshop is for several reasons. You know, in crypto, we like to always talk about all-time highs, right? And actually, like in this context, like the all-time high would be the fact that there's so much noise. Not only noise from like an investment perspective and projects and tokens and so on, but from like a BD relationship comms perspective, where like, you know, people are always flooding your inbox, your DMs. Maybe you're the one flooding, maybe someone's flooding you, right? But the question really is then, if we're currently in this space where so many people are just messaging here and there looking for favors or things and so on, how do we actually like stand out? How do you establish yourself as someone who's not that, right? And then on top of that, when you do start approaching relationships in such a way that's like, I would say, meaningful, the importance there is that these relationships can compound. So you know, like you meet someone, you establish a strong relationship with someone, that actually then multiplies to other people and so on. We'll get into that a bit more. Also, you know, the importance of trust. Trust will be like a word you'll hear throughout. And as we know, like the ethos of Web3 and decentralized space, it's important that like you have trust in people, especially like, you know, this industry can go up and down, and people can act certain ways today and tomorrow. So we'll get into some of that as well. And then networking. Who you know is and like your relationship with certain people is what can, you know, like leverage your experience in this space and your results further. So those are reasons why it matters. Very briefly, this looks like a long list of topics. It is, but let's try to go over them briefly, because I think more importantly, as you're listening to this, write down some questions, as Maki said, because I'm more so interested in these questions and discussions we can have. So quickly, first one being like the importance of like, as we said, networking, but specifically in real life networking. You know, we're in this digital space, we're behind screens all the time, but I really believe in the value of meeting people face to face. So we'll get into that. Also, bringing value first. Now, I'll go through these a bit quicker, just so we're not like explaining everything, but rather later in the slides. Less is more approach, perfecting your first impressions, approaching bigger companies can be very scary and challenging thing to do. Obviously, why I think cold outreach isn't the greatest approach. I will touch on that. How to go about doing smart social engagement, Also important how you actually message people and reach out to them. So we'll look at two examples, like what's a good type of message and what's a bad, and why. Also, like landing a job in Web3, something I think some people here are probably like interested in. So we'll cover some things around that. The discoverability moment of actual projects and what's out there is a big challenge, I would say. So maybe some tips and tricks there, but certainly, there's a whole sea of things happening, and it's important to know how to navigate. And then, as I said, building these like organic conversations, organic relationships, and establish them as long-term things. Obviously, like no workshop comes without a disclaimer. This disclaimer is the fact that like these are my personal experiences, knowledge that I've developed over the space. Take this as like a starting point, as some guidelines. Don't take this as the law. Don't take this as like the strict rules. I could be wrong as well, and if I am, like do message, do ask those questions, point me out, like call my BS. But this is like the purpose of us like actually exchanging these ideas, because it could be that some of you here have like a better approach and better ways. But anyways, that's my personal. And on that point, as I initially said, for those who didn't join at the very beginning chit chat with Maki, I'm also learning and developing like every day in this space. So I'm a student of the game, as we all are here together. All right, let's get into it. So I want to start off with this quote, a quote that actually like I kind of thought of. So it's not, I can't really reference anyone specific. And that's like the main difference between Web 2 and Web 3, I would say, is that like the focus isn't as much on actually selling something like the traditional way, but rather co-creating and like raising this ecosystem together as an entire network. As we know, for those who are like active in the space, if we're focused on Solana or like blockchain technology or Web3, and this is like what we see every day, it could be like our reality. But the fact of the matter is that it's still very much an emerging space, emerging market, and we really hope for it to grow even like exponentially greater and have more impact in this world. But in order to do that, like everyone in the space has to grow, like all projects, new projects, established projects, us, competitors, other projects, and so on, right? So our shared success really will be like essential in actually growing this ecosystem. So I would say that's like the main thing we should consider when talking about and connections in the space. Now let's go into actual the IRL part of things. I understand like some people here are probably like extroverts. I know some people here as well. Also, some people might be more introverts. That's great, no issues there. Like to stick to their space, like to do their things and so on. But I would highly encourage like taking IRL networking seriously. The more we are working in this like cyber digital space where we have computers and we're talking like we are now and streaming on these different platforms, the less I would say like tangibly connected we are. Like I see no faces now, I'm just looking at the screen, right? And actually like these, I would say more so online connections and calls can actually start to like fade, like even like your receptors, right? And actually might not like establish such strong connections with people as something like a face-to-face interaction would. So like the good thing now about our space is that there are more and more of these types of activations and in-person events that people can go to and attend, right? Starting with like some things that Solana Foundation organize, right? They used to organize those Hacker House events. Then they started organizing other events, right? They have like big Breakpoint, Apex events throughout the year. But also more importantly, because the world is big and one foundation can only do so much, this whole like activation around super teams in different countries and cities really gives people more opportunities to meet people in their local communities and network and hack together and develop and so on. I do have like a brief example on that, where a couple examples where people were in my Telegram chat and they were just messaging me on some things. It didn't really like go anywhere, I would say, until I actually met them at some super team events. And through one conversation and a follow-up on Telegram, we actually made like meaningful business, I would say, or like partnership campaign opportunities, right? So, I know it's a hard ask maybe for some people, but really try to like put yourself out there and challenge yourself to aim to be at least like one IRL event per quarter, even more if you can. But you will see the benefit of that. Now, this one I would say I kind of felt and learned fairly early on in doing BD, and that's like the importance of offering value, giving value rather than like asking. It can seem obvious, but it's not always the case. When we're approaching people and projects and we have like a goal in mind, like I work for a company and I want to sell this or integrate my product into some other platform, that's my goal. If I'm approaching projects and people with my requests for my personal or my business benefit, it might not actually stick. Like the counterparty will ask, what's in it for me? Why should I partner with you, right? So like finding this mutually beneficial approach and opportunities is the way to go. Like put yourself in that mind frame of the company or the people you're speaking to on the other side, and really challenge yourself and ask yourself, like, why would they even want to partner with me? Try to find ways and reasons why they would, and actually that will make like the connection more effective to make. I do have many examples, maybe like discussions for other days, but I've seen like real success in like the conversations that I've had of people approaching us for partnerships where they offered this value. Even like an example where a project that they had like an interesting proposition, maybe it wasn't like on the top of our priority list because we maybe didn't have like the development resources to work on that at the moment, and they were offering us like their developers to do this, giving us reasons why we should. So these are always like the win-win situations you should strive for when considering like discussing opportunities with projects. Now, giving value isn't only you being a product and like offering your product to someone. It could even be like sharing insights, so not product related, right? Maybe you're sharing information, and be mindful of the information you share. Obviously, you don't want to like air dirty laundry or whatever drama and stuff, but like productive information, productive insights, sharing that with people can really like elevate your character and profile in their eyes because you're offering that value. Also connecting people, like if you know projects that are looking to hire certain people and people in your network that could fit that and so on, or any other types of like people connections can be valued, and this is what like your network would remember you for and engage with you further because you're offering that value. But when it does come to actually products and you having a product and you reaching out to another project to offer like a solution, really try to like here I wrote like aim to like multiply impact, meaning try to see like where the greatest impact for your partnership is. Like if you only see like an incremental value that you're adding to the partnership, try to like consider where the greater multiplier is, right? So if you can offer like a 2x, a 3x value rather than like a smaller amount, challenge yourself to do that, because then you will become and your product will become more interesting to the partnership because you're looking for that multiplying impact. So just like brief summary on that point here is that in Web3, real connections and shared value drive growth. So ultimately give before you ask. Now moving on, less is more. This is maybe like an obvious one, but sometimes people can get carried away with writing a lot, extensively talking in circles about what it is that they're offering and so on. So important to actually be focused in your approach. Like you want to be interested in the work they're doing. So you're not just entering a conversation and saying, hey, this is my product and you should integrate it, but rather, try to see what the people you're approaching or the project you're approaching like has some like shared work business interest, and slowly introduce your product into the conversation. But ultimately it has to be on this like human like level. So really avoid any types of sales pitchy like discussions. Also, first impressions are like everything. So it's really important to come prepared, right? Sometimes it's even more important, it's more valuable for you to actually take your time in approaching someone. Like, if I were to approach someone today and just blabber out or not like define the idea, or if I approach them in 2 weeks time but with a sharp approach and like a tight pitch and a clean one pager or deck with no fluffiness around it and so on, the delay between now and 2 weeks could actually like bring more value. I know sometimes things are like time pressing and you need to move quickly, but the point is like try to be as like direct as possible on that. Also, something that seems like a bit ancient now, the term white papers. I mean, they still exist, but previously people were sending like big documents, like check this out and read this and that. Now the focus really in our space and like to build partnerships and relationships is to be as direct as possible, as succinct as possible, and really try to like, how do I say, like take the leave that strong first impression and count on like the first approach more so than like you following up, and ultimately like what's most important is time, and especially like people's time. Like your time is important, but like other people's time is very important as well. So be mindful of that, especially when you're asking people for time and hey, let's jump on a call or something. You should really like be prepared ultimately to know how to explain like what do you do, or like what your product does or project does, and how you see us partnering in like 15 seconds or less. Now I know this sounds crazy, like, oh well, how can I explain everything in 15 seconds? That's not the point here. The point here is to like spark that interest in 15 seconds or less. If you're talking in circles about whatever topics, you can lose someone in just 3 seconds by like how you're actually communicating that idea. So the communication, the sharpness around the first impression is important. So take your time with preparing for that. Another point there, which you can have a look at, is what we discussed, the importance of like simplicity and confidence in approaching. Now, speaking of approaching the big players, obviously, there's so many projects in the space, bigger, smaller, startups, scale-ups, establishing ones, different series A, B, C types of level businesses. Maybe, I mean, not to say it's easy to approach smaller projects, maybe smaller projects like reply quicker, but I would say the bigger the names, the bigger the projects, the more difficult it might be to actually spark that connection and get conversations going. And the reason for that is like those bigger companies and projects, they have like the greater upside, or at least like, the prioritization of their work might be different. Also, they have like reputational risk. If like a bigger project is looking at a new project that they haven't heard of, they will obviously be wary and have like some due diligence that they have to do around that. So the trust factor, like earning the trust and the understanding of what like you're pitching and who you are, is very important for these big names. And it could actually take a bit of time. Like you won't just get big companies to reply to you immediately, but it's like how you have to play the game, I would say. So before even like approaching these big companies and projects, really understand like what their pain points are, why you're even reaching out to them, how you can like help them essentially. Also understand their risk profile. Like maybe you're speaking to the wrong people or the wrong project, right? Like maybe they're not even interested in what you're doing for, risk profiled reasons, for obvious reasons. Also figure out how you can add the real value, as we keep talking about. And even if you don't get like what you're looking for immediately, and if that's, for example, like an integration, to get like any sort of association with a bigger player is meaningful, right? Like if for example, you're you're a project and you're doing some sort of promo video and you're highlighting in your promo or like intro video or something, launch video, you're highlighting different projects. I mean, in our case, it's a simple example like a wallet, where if a project is like showcasing in their video that they're using Solflare wallet to do XYZ on their application, that's like by way of association, you could potentially get some co-marketing out of it. You can get a like, comment, maybe retweet, right? And that's meaningful too, and that like establishes some connection and credibility. Cold outreach is mostly dead. I mean, we still all do it. Like you can't avoid it per se, but you should try to find ways around it. So obviously there's like different ways we're communicating, if that's email, if that's X, if that's LinkedIn. Some things sound like dinosaur, like emails or like phone calls, like who's doing that, right? But the point is, if you're DMing without much context, how often have you gotten an unread message? Like very often. If I've ever done that to anyone, like I do apologize. But people have done it to me as well, right? So instead of focusing on like crafting a cold outreach message that you'll send to like hundreds of people and more, maybe think about it like a bit differently, right? Focus on the actual network expansion. And if you know people who know people who know people, great. If you don't, then work on expanding your network so you can be in that position to know someone who knows someone who knows someone. Because ultimately, the network can actually be more valuable to you in making the introductions and entering those doors and conversations that you want to get into, rather than doing it the cold way, right? A huge benefit to that is something like our community here and other communities as well, and community overlap. So for example, we're all here today. Maybe we're part of some NFT community, right? Maybe we're part of super team communities, other DAOs, etc. The more overlaps you have and the people you might know and have more like points of relationship, I would say, the easier you can actually get connected to other people who know people who know people. And ultimately, the warm introductions will always outperform the cold ones, based on my experience. But if anyone wants, they can challenge that point. So ultimately, credibility comes from connections and trust, and like the networks are the ones who actually open doors in most of the cases. Now, smart social engagement. Besides you actually going and pitching to people, one thing that I found to be like effective is actually following what other projects do, what some partners do, and commenting on those things in like a genuine way, obviously. So not just like reaching out to people and congratulating because I want to get brownie points, but to actually congratulate them for like the hard work and the good work they've done. But that also establishes like a good relationship, and that also sparks in their minds like, oh look, they've actually like noticed the new thing, the feature or the product we've launched. Like, oh, this person or this team is like noticing us. That's very nice of them. Like they've taken the 2 minutes to actually send us a message about it. Those are small things that can compound. So I'd highly encourage that moment as well, of you messaging people and projects maybe, but without like the interest to actually ask them of anything, but rather just to show that you're noticing their good work. One way you can go about doing it is by having these platforms like XPro, previously known as TweetDeck, or I'm sure there's like other platforms there where you can actually set up ways that you can follow different projects and their socials. And so you can have like a good, make sure you set your way up where you can like in somehow every day see who's doing what and who announced what, so you can actually act on those types of conversations, ultimately staying in the loop, but like quickly commenting on things. And ultimately on that point, the quality of engagement is always like greater than the generic volume that you're putting out. Now, going into messaging, maybe I should speed things up slightly so we're not here like all day, all night. But this is one quote that's like really stuck with me and I think about. And that's the fact that like great messaging isn't about getting a reply, but rather about giving the person a reason to reply. And very briefly, we can look at two examples here. Obviously, there's different nuances of bad messages and good messages. So just entertain this example for the purpose of education. And that's this one here. So I represent a fast-growing blockchain company providing cutting-edge AI-powered NFT and DeFi services. We would like to integrate our technology into your system for mutual benefit. Please respond to your earliest convenience, schedule a partial call, etc., etc. So, I mean, what is this? I have no idea, right? Like, what does this mean? Does anyone know? It's a very cold message. It's a very robotic message. It's maybe like a very AI or like, generic message that isn't personalized towards me or towards my company or what my company does. It's like this jargon, like we say, AI, NFT, DeFi. Like you can throw out so many words, but and put them together, right? Like a nothing. How do we call it? Like a nothing burger, which doesn't really like give you anything. And on top of which, they're asking you for a call. They're in some way maybe a bit pushing, right, for the call, which can leave like not the great impression for me to look at this and say, okay, let me reply, right? Whereas a good message could look something like this. GM Miro, I've been using Solflare for a while. The portfolio dashboard and staking flow are well done. I noticed the team's been focused on making onboarding clear for new Solana users. At my company, we've been helping wallets test microcopy and UX tweaks that reduce new user drop-offs by 15 to 20%. I'd love to share a few examples. No pitch, just insights. Do you have 15 minutes? So a message like this tells you like a couple things. Okay, great. One, they're a Solflare user. Woo! But I mean, that doesn't like just sell you on that part, but rather that they're noticing the work you're doing. They're also noticing how you're trying to improve like your user experience, your onboarding flow. And they're offering like a direct service or solution to helping you reduce like drop-off rate and like increase retention. Now, it could still be like that we jump on a call with them and it turns out to be a nothing burger, like I say, but this still warrants, it sparks some interest. I mean, the tone is warm, there's like real context there. It's tailored towards me, my company, what we do. It's very clear to me what they're trying to communicate. And like every sentence I read wants me to read the next one to like understand. It like captures my attention, essentially. Now, of course, there's like way better ways to message than this. It's not like the perfect message, but you get the point. Be personal, be clear, be value first with your approach, and obviously don't be like generic and pushy when communicating. Landing a job in Web3. So it's a tough one, even like generally, let alone BD. It's one that requires like, it's like, how do you get a job? If a job is requiring experience, but you need experience to get the job and so on, right? It's like the chicken or the egg type thing. So, I mean, my advice, like always, is try to like enter small doors. Even if you have an interest, I mean, it doesn't have to be BD, it could be something else. But if you have an interest and you realize like, it's challenging to get into that position because you might not have the experience. It's actually like very smart if you're very interested in that particular project to try to enter on any doors. Like, for example, maybe you can start as like a lower position or like a different business unit that's maybe like more applicable to you and your skill sets, whether that's like a community moderator, customer support. I'm mentioning these because I've like been some of these before, so it's not to say these positions are less, right? But maybe based on your experiences can actually enter through those roles and then work your way up. Because what happens is like what's more important is for you to actually get exposure. For example, if you're working customer support, you're actually learning the product or whatever that project is. You're learning about it through like all these conversations and questions you're getting from people. So you're getting like context. You're developing your knowledge base. Ultimately, you're developing then your connections, whether that's with like colleagues, peers, users, or like the wider ecosystem. And all of that can then like accumulate to you developing, whether in that business unit or ultimately like entering like the BD space. Because ultimately BD, as this like third point states, it's more of like a mindset of creating value and spotting opportunities. And something like this comes with like experience that, okay, like I might have some of, but we're always developing that like experience. And so yeah, I would just say important to do that. Also, as I previously said as well, some people might be full-time Web3, some people part-time, some people not at all, like working in Web3. The benefit of this space as well is that you do have communities where you can gain experience, even if that's like on a volunteer basis, at least to start. And I know so many people who have started like that and now are working full-time in Web3 with like a paid salary and everything. So no excuses, right? And this is actually like maybe like a contentious question of like, what are you in this for? Like, are you in this for the money? I mean, okay, yes, like we would all like some money, right? Like who are we kidding? But more importantly, like if you're only doing this for the money, that gets like fleshed out very quickly, that gets noticed very quickly. Maybe your motivation changes with the money, right? So it's this like missionary versus mercenary stand, right? If you're and by the way, it's not like greater to be one or the other, but like being a missionary, you're like driven by like purpose, and certain like values. Mercenaries might be more driven by like profits, which, okay, like we need businesses need profits to like survive. But it would be great, like your success, I would say, results like through greater meaning than just like earning a salary in Web3, right? Like if you're very passionate about this space, if you believe in the underlying technology and the value it could bring to people and different geographies and globally, really, like whether this is Web3, whether this is whatever you're interested, like always ask yourself this, like what are you in it for? Because then if you have that purpose, if it transcends like just the money that you're working for, it becomes very rewarding, the work you do, because there's like more purpose, more mission behind it. Ways to discover projects. I'll try to speed it up just slightly in the interest of time. Very difficult to find one place where you can find all Web3 projects, all Solana projects. It's sort of scattered. As I said, still a emerging and developing market. Obviously, you can check out Twitter, X. You can check out all those platforms that like are showcasing different tokens in the space. And by token, you can identify what some projects are. Things like Messari, they have like very interesting reports that they're showcasing different growing projects and different like sections or sectors in the crypto space, even particularly for Solana as well. So you can do that research. But then diving a bit deeper into Solana, maybe some of you might know of these that are listed. The grid is one of them, where you can actually explore different, it's like a explore page essentially of different projects and different categories and so on. So you can check that out. Also Super Team Earn, where you can actually find even work opportunities or different bounties, but also figure out like, oh wow, I didn't know this project existed in this space. And then also some like ecosystem hubs and hackathons. Hackathons are a great one because like Colosseum, for example, that's actually happening right now, where at the end of hackathons, you can actually find thousands of submissions and actually identify early projects in this space and maybe even reach out to them. I mean, all of this requires some effort on your part, like nothing will come easy, but there's ways where you can find projects and connect with them and see where you can add the value for them and to them. On that point, as you guys know, Solflare does have an explore page as well of its own. We're trying to bridge this gap of discoverability for our users directly in our app as well. So there, we're listing different dApps across different categories. We have a bunch of banners, which over time we'll use a lot more to actually like inform you on different things, educate you. There's a news section and so on. So this explore section will be developing a lot over time. So stay tuned and keep following that. Now, building organic conversations, as we said, how to approach people from a business standpoint, but also very important to actually like find some common interest outside of work as well, right? So maybe you're seeing some people talk about, different hobbies, sports, events, pets, memes, whatever. Maybe you're seeing people posting it online. I would say like on a human level, it's always a good idea to actually like find some friends or some like interest in the space that go beyond like just the work interest for the sake of like having genuine relationships. But then like that, it's like the flywheel thingy where that can actually then lead to potential opportunities like you never really know, right? So if you're already like committing yourself to being in this space and meeting people and so on from like a business perspective, if you're already spending time and maybe you're away from family and so on, at least make it also enjoyable for you in like different topics, organic conversations that you can have, meet interesting people. And then again, like I said, the flywheel effect could lead to business opportunities as well. Now, as I said, opportunities might not translate overnight. Sometimes it requires many months, maybe even like a year or 2 or 3. So like not being discouraged by overnight success or lack of like business opportunities. I would say more important to actually be consistent in like your approach to building relationships. Obviously don't be pushy, but like have this like natural reoccurring relationship building with people is important, and ultimately that compounding will occur. So you guys maybe know like compounding interest with finances, money and so on, but it's also the case with networks and relationships that it can compound in such a way. So be patient, but always stay on top of the game. Let me fly through just a bit here because of time. So a couple of quotes I would say here. In Web3, people are hypersensitive for obvious reasons, right? There could be some trust issues. People could have been burned. People maybe had relationships and broke them. People got rugged and so on. So actually, it could come across as like difficult to have relationships and build them in this space if everyone is already coming with their guard up for reasons I've mentioned. But actually, that could bring opportunity to you, because if this space, I mean, yes, there's good people, obviously, but if there's bad people as well, it gives opportunity for those good people to actually stand out and make the meaningful relationships with other good people, right? So have that in mind. Even though the space can be, people might have a guard when you're talking to them, look at it as a good thing for you to stand out. Because trust at the end of the day is like a very slow thing to earn, can feel like that certainly, and you can lose it instantly, as we've seen for so many unfortunately cases in the space. So I think that's the key takeaways here we just discussed: building those relationships, offering the value, being human, being consistent, being strategic, and growing in the space with people, with communities, being credible and making those right connections.